Yeah. So take a stab at that actual question. What is the church? Like you've touched on the biblical and the contextual and stuff. So like so when you try to say, you try to pull it back from that contextual to kind of a broader kind of thing.
But I would say, I do think there's more than one definition. So, the pure definition, it might be, the church, is made up of the people that follow Jesus, um, and participate in his mission and are active in the kingdom. That's like the big C proper thing. But I would also say the church, a really good definition of the church might be a community of faith that is listening to the Holy Spirit, discerning God's mission, participating in that, worshiping together, and being community together and welcoming others into that, something like that. So I do think there's like a small kind of contextual definition that we have to have in our day and time, but then there is this large theological definition.
Yeah. Well, and I asked not because I have my definition all fixed, but because I'm trying to figure that out myself. And so, realizing that I've served and worked with church leaders and been in the church, contextual, big C, little, whatever, all those things. And for years didn't have a clear understanding myself. And now I'm still trying to work all that out.
Yeah. I mean, maybe my question back would be like, what if the definition of the church is several things?
Yeah.
What if it's more than one definition?
Yeah.
And I think I'm learning that more and more, as I get older, and also I'm involved in this network that we kind of started in Colorado Springs, which has invited all these different, churches and kingdom expressions to kind of operate together, be in community together. And so just this last Saturday, I'm part of our church, but then I was working on a project that another church is trying to do, and we're partnering with them financially. So you have these kind of gray areas where communities of faith are starting to come together and do things together, and you don't know where one starts and one ends. And so to me, that's a beautiful definition of the church.
Yeah.
Working. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so a key word in Forge and in your, multiple definitions of church is mission, discerning God's mission or God's mission for the church, for his church. And Terry Ishii and I talked on the first episode about loaded terms and how that has very different meanings. Where I did my doctorate, mission was all about global evangelism.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you mean when you talk about mission?
Well, so I'm one of these people that doesn't like to throw out words, but I like to keep them and reclaim them, redefine them for what they're supposed to mean. Terry and we get into this a little bit because he's a little bit different than I. But so, I see like mission, missional, missionary, all those things are grammatical terms for the same thing. So, mission is us leaning into and participating in the kingdom. I mean, that is mission. And our mission, the famous saying is that, it's not that the church has a mission, but God's mission has a church to do it. And so, in a pure sense, I think God's people, when we're participating with God in his mission, then we are on mission. We'll start using these little terms. Then we become missionaries.
Mm-hmm. And
that's the same whether we're sent to Afghanistan or we're sent to Alabama. We're still everyday missionaries. We live into the kingdom on mission every day of our lives. And then, in one of the kind of scriptures I like to point to is John 20:21. And Jesus shows up in ironically in this locked room with disciples,
Yeah.
which tells you a little bit about the church, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
they're locked,
Yeah.
they're fearful of what's going on culturally outside, and so they've locked themselves together. And Jesus, is like, no. I like to think he goes like, no. As the Father sent me, so I send you. And of course, that word "sent," apostolos, and we get mission. From that, then we are a sent missionary people. And so when we're doing mission things, we're being missional. And so I just simply see those words like that. I know that they kind of get loaded
Yeah.
because they become strategies, or mission is this and mission isn't that. If everything is mission, then nothing is mission. A couple of scholars have debated, and I just think we, like humans, we love to take something and just really make it complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
It may be hard, but it's not that complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's keep teasing out this mission stuff. So, and this is theological concept. So Missio Dei, right? So,
Yeah.
and you talk about mission, kingdom, and then mission and church. So, like, what is the Missio Dei?
Well, I mean,
So mission of God.
this. Yeah, grammatically, it just means the mission of God.
Right.
Missio Dei.
Fancy Latin. Right.
Fancy Latin makes us sound super smart.
Right.
And,
we're very erudite.
Yeah.
That's why we have white hair and we teach at Denver Seminary.
I know it. I know. But Missio Dei has also become this identifier for a way of thinking. So it is Latin. It does just mean the mission of God. But it is also, when we're using it, like in this conversation right now, we're kind of using an identifier for a way of thinking that kind of started, most people would say with Bart, and he gave a talk, and it was the first time that he connected theology and mission together.
Mm-hmm.
And Trinity, so it was these sending concepts, and then it just kind of kept going through the 1900s and developing more and more and more. And some listeners may have heard of New Begin, and that all got to Frost and Hirsch, who started Forge. And so Missio Dei, when we say Missio Dei, we're kind of talking about this concept of God is already on mission. And our job, if you will, I hate the word job, but our maybe our calling is to have an awareness and a listening posture for the Spirit to see where God is at work, and join Him in that. There are gaps, maybe is a way to say it, gaps between the world and the kingdom, and we get the opportunity to step into those gaps and display and proclaim the kingdom. And so, so I think Missio Dei is just this way of thinking that we are participants in something God is already doing. And I guess I would say, as opposed to when you talked about when you were studying mission and it was overseas, for decades and decades, there was this, this thought process that God is absent in a place,
mm-hmm.
and we carry God with us and deposit Him among like indigenous people or whatever in a culture, and of course make them look like Americans and all that kind of stuff. And,
right.
But we're kind of carrying God into a vacuum, right? And I think Missio Dei is saying the opposite of that. No. God is already at work. This is God's world. He's omnipresent in it. Go somewhere and then see how you can participate. And so I would say that's just as true for overseas as it is in your neighborhood.